Greetings, my friends. This is Stan, and I thank you for taking time to read this little book and going through the prayer and the first 6 principles of what it means to be a Christian entrepreneur as it is coming to us and to those who are really supportive of this movement. And we ask you to consider joining it and becoming a part of the movement. Now, principle number 7, obviously the last one. And we thought that since we are modern media, since we're trying to be diverse, and because we oftentimes believe that if it's important, it needs to be heard, that we would take the text and I would put it in the form of a talk, of a little lecture, a little presentation that will help you better understand what we believe in the Christian entrepreneur. Principle number 7. Let's begin with this story. Just recently, Dr. Billy Graham, after a long and legendary ministry, passed away on to glory. There are reports that before his death that he was doing a little musing about his life and the work that he had done, and certainly he had been blessed in many ways, but he mentioned that maybe, just maybe, if he had it to do over again, he might do it a bit differently. That instead of having so many big crusades and events and, talking to millions of people literally, that perhaps he would spend much more time actually working with a small group of 12, 13, 14, 15 men and women that he could really pour his life into in teaching and mentoring and guiding and discipling them. Just maybe that should have been a different and maybe at sometimes even a more effective approach. Well, there was somebody who tried that small group approach of 12, 13, 14 men and women, and it seemed to work out pretty well when it comes to changing the world. Well, that has continued to get me to thinking about what it means to be not only an entrepreneur, but a Christian entrepreneur. And then recently I came across a little book that was written by a very wise young man. I mean, he's a young man, but he's very wise, and he has his own little coaching business. And he wrote a book called Teach and Grow Rich. Teach and Grow Rich. Well, obviously it's a little bit of a parody of the famous book Think and Grow Rich. Rather than Think and Grow Rich, Teach and Grow Rich. His name is Danny Inney. And you might find the book enjoyable. It was very thoughtful. And what he said is that if you want to grow rich, you have to be a teacher. Teach and grow rich. Now, he was not saying that you'd make a whole lot of money if you're a teacher. That doesn't seem to jibe with a lot of the realities of the world. But if you do enough of it and do it well enough, you might make a pretty good living, maybe a very good living. However, what he was saying is that if you teach others, you will grow rich in what is important. Rich in ideas, rich in influence, rich in friends, rich in understanding, rich in relationships, perhaps really rich in what is really important. So he said, go out there and teach. And if you teach, you will grow rich. I think he might be onto something, and so I just simply pass that on to you. I think part of the problem is that for years we have made teaching now into a profession, a career, really a business. And so if you want to be a teacher, you have to get educated, you have to take the right classes and courses, you have to be certified, you have to be licensed, kind of stamped by the state. And unless you have all of those credentials, you are not a teacher. You can't teach. What a silly idea. Teaching has always been not a profession, but a confession of how you confess what is true and what you know, and it's a position of leadership in the community. It's a responsibility that we all have. I think we need perhaps to get back more and more to that idea. I was also deeply influenced by a friend, a Jewish scholar, who reminded me, he said, Stan, did you know that in many of the fellowships of the people of the Jewish tradition, there is a belief that every good Jew should be prepared to say certain words just before they die. Just before they die, there are words they need to say, and they better say them if they can. Well, I was surprised to hear that. I hadn't heard that before, but I thought that was probably a good idea. And then I thought, I wonder what my final words would be. Now, obviously, you may not be able to control when you're going to die. You may not even know about it, but you might. And knowing that, what would be your final words? I still haven't worked that out. I'm still thinking about that. Perhaps you have some ideas that you can suggest for me. What might be your final words? That's a great exercise to think about. These are the final words you want people to remember when you pass on. What would they be? Well, the recorded story is that Jesus, just before he left his ministry here on planet Earth, that in Matthew we hear the story of him calling all of the people together, the men and women, the people who were following him and remained true to him and had enjoyed his lessoning, his teaching, his being with them, the entire scene where the kingdom of God was taught and revealed for those little over 3 years. And in a modern paraphrase, he kind of said this: okay guys, okay gals, here's the deal. I want you to go out there and I want you to teach, and I want you to coach, and I want you to guide, and I want you to mentor, and I want you to testify to what you heard and what you've seen. I want you to go into the whole World Wide Web and to the whole worldwide out there, and I want you to do those things. I want you to be those things. I want you to go and teach. Go and teach. Go and teach. And I am convinced that that is principle number 7. And just as you are made to serve others is the prime directive, in effect, go and teach is the final directive. And we are to live number 1 and live number 7 and live all of them in between. And if you want to be a Christian entrepreneur who makes a difference in the world, builds a business that lasts, that has a legacy that's important, you will do just that. You will go and teach. Go and teach. Go and teach. Thank you.